Returning now to the same-sex marriage debate and the news from the ABS today that more than half of all voters have already filled in and returned their surveys. With the end date edging closer, both sides of the debate are pushing ahead with their messages to try and sway those who we get to fill out their forms. Earlier I spoke with Richard Basil-Jones from Ebiquity, who has conducted an analysis of the advertising we've seen from both campaigns so far. Richard Basil-Jones, appreciate your time. Now, you've taken a comprehensive look at the campaigns from both the yes and the no camps so far. Firstly, who seems to have the deepest pockets? Is one side outspending the other significantly?
Yes, indeed. Certainly we're seeing, when it comes to TV advertising, in particular across the 5 major cities of Australia, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, that the no campaigners are pretty much outspending the yes campaigners 2 to 1.
And do you expect that we'll see that advertising, not just from the no camp, but from both sides, really ramping up as we get to the end of this voting window, that, like we see, for example, at federal election time?
Actually, no. And I say that because it's a little different this way. And it's interesting to compare it to the election campaign process, where typically in an election you've got 5 weeks of mad advertising for the different government parties pushing their agenda, with a voting day at the very end. And we do see that ramping up and a massive amount of advertising, particularly in the last 2 weeks before the vote. But this time round in the postal survey for same-sex marriage, it's an 8-week window, and people can vote on any day throughout that 8-week window. So what we should see is some consistency of advertising messages from both parties, from both the camps, the yes and no camps, throughout that 8-week period.
What about the messaging techniques we're seeing from each of the different sides? Are they taking a similar approach when it comes to having a key message that they're trying to get out there, or are you seeing that they're differing in their strategy on that front?
Yeah, look, a slight difference in their approach, actually. So what we've seen with the no campaigners right up until this weekend, actually, was a very consistent message. And it was one campaign, one message, slight variations on the same theme, 15-second, 30-second type approach. No radio advertising that we picked up, no press campaigns up until the weekend. So it was a very single-minded approach, whereas the yes campaign had used different forms of media. We've seen outdoor, we've seen and heard radio, also press, as well as TV, and using different messages. We've seen the Bachelor or Bachelorette advertisement. We've seen we've seen 3 different TV actually commercials to date in the yes campaign's approach. So yeah, certainly a different approach being taken by both parties.
Now, Richard, there was a lot of controversy over the yes campaign's text message a couple of weekends ago. A lot of voters seem to feel that their privacy had somehow been invaded. Is there a risk, do you think, that sort of direct messaging to voters could backfire?
Look, there is a risk. There's no question, and just from talking to friends and family, and I've certainly, my family was on the receiving end of those messages as well. There's certainly a different feeling about whether or not that was effective or not effective. I think what the people behind the yes campaign have decided on, that on balance it was going to be effective for them. That yes, they were probably going to upset some people along the way, but on balance it was going to be effective and work for them. It's always the risk, but they believed that by taking that approach they were going to get their message across more effectively than the people they upset.
So, Richard, you're the expert. After looking at all of this material in such depth, does one side, do you think, appear to be communicating more effectively, in your view, on the advertising and the message front? Do you think that either side is winning that communications battle so far?
Yeah, look, I don't think there is a clear leader, to be honest with you. I think, this is a very emotional debate. There is no question about that one. Far more emotional than a political election, that's for sure. And I think we're seeing both parties now, just in particular in the last 48 hours, start to sort of push a little bit more emotion into their message. We're seeing the yes campaigners starting to use family and talk about equality. And we saw a very interesting campaign by the no campaigners, which was really about some of the hatred that's coming through with regard to saying no. So I think it's an interesting approach. I'm not sure which one is the lead player right now. I think both, if you like, have a single message. It's not as if it's like a political election where you've got lots of different points and a lot of different issues, or if you like, policies to talk to. This is a yes and this is a no. And so their job now is to create some really persuasive arguments around both those, if you like, messaging. To date, I don't think there is a clear leader.
Well, time will tell. Richard Basil-Jones from Ebiquity, we do appreciate you joining us with your insights on the latest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashley.